Now before we get into the video, I do want to say a massive thank you to today's video sponsors, and once again that is jerseyfifa.com. They really do help keep the content on this channel going, and they even sent me a free shirt which you can see on screen here. And as you can see, I got the new Manchester United home kit, and genuinely the kit really is top quality. I highly recommend their product. So make sure to get in a link in the description down below, and now if you use code JerseyFifa at checkout, you'll get 10% off your order. You get a great football shirt, and you help support the channel, which I really do appreciate massively. Hey guys, welcome back to the AJ Analysis channel, where we are back talking about Manchester United. Because this is quite a big 8-day period that they kind of find themselves in at the moment, with some big games coming up. And it didn't get off to the greatest start, this kind of 3-match spell where they got 3 big games. It didn't get off to the greatest start against Newcastle with the 0-0 draw. Now, whilst it was 0-0 and quite a frustrating game, I don't necessarily think United were bad. It was just a frustrating performance, and it was one of those ones where things don't quite seem to go your way in terms of referee decisions, the bounce of the ball, certain things like that. But of course, on top of that were the tactical issues as well. So let's just get into it and talk about the tactics. And as we probably expected, because Newcastle do this under Eddie Howe, Newcastle played with an incredible intensity. And first of all, let's talk about Newcastle. They deserve a lot of credit, and Eddie Howe and his coaching staff deserve a lot of credit for the intensity levels and the fitness levels that he's got this team playing with. Because particularly for the first 60 minutes, they were relentless in the way that they pressed, and they didn't give United a minute really. And it's what we've seen from Newcastle all season. They do it to pretty much every team. Outside of City and Arsenal, they've probably been maybe the best side in the Premier League so far this season. They're certainly right up there in all the underlying stats. And it continued in this game, pressing nice and high up the pitch, and we know this isn't United's strength. However, what I think we are seeing is United changing approach slightly and adapting to what we call Ten Hag ball. Because in recent weeks, or perhaps more a month ago actually, in this situation, United would just send the ball long. If they get pressed, they just play the ball long and get it away from danger. That, of course, wasn't the case in this game, and we saw United trying to play with a bit more bravery on the ball, and they looked to try and play out from the back a bit more, and that was nice to see. And there were spells, particularly early on in the game, where United done it really well, with quick 1-2s round corners, quick passes, allowing United to play their way through the pitch. However, we know this squad isn't always great at playing out from the back. We know De Gea isn't really made for it, and we certainly know that Fred isn't made for it. So there were situations where Newcastle were able to nick the ball high up the pitch and cause problems for United. And this was one of the first issues that United faced. They faced an incredibly fit and incredibly intense Newcastle side that constantly put them under pressure and tried to stop United playing. However, as a result of pressing so high up the pitch, there were situations where United tried to get in behind, because Newcastle were playing quite a high line, so they looked to stretch the pitch, particularly with Varane stepping forward and looking to play long passes over the top of the defence. But unfortunately, as much as I think Varane is a good footballer and normally a good long passer, he really didn't have a very good game with his long passing in particular. Apart from that, I thought he was alright, had a good game, defensively especially, but on the ball his long passing wasn't up to scratch, and on the occasions that the long passes were slightly better from the back, Ronaldo had mistimed his run and was offside. So that's kind of one area where United were a bit frustrating. Despite this frustration, I thought that Manchester United still took control of this game really well, especially as the game progressed and got less erratic. I thought United started to take control, and I think this is the sort of game where that wouldn't have happened in the past. So again, I think that is a positive sign, and Ten Hag deserves credit. And they've done this using a 2-3 shape, with Luke Shaw and Diogo Dalot playing either side of Casemiro. Now, in terms of the width that they played with, it's something that we've spoken about a lot this season. It varied during the game. There would be times where they would sit deep and narrow, there's times where they would make underlapping runs forward, and occasionally, but probably not often enough, situations where they would make overlapping runs around the winger, around Antony and Sancho. Of course, what it's done playing this system allowed Fred and Bruno Fernandes to push higher, and Fred actually pushed higher than what Christian Eriksen even normally does. We know Eriksen is a very creative player. He was missing for this game. Fred came in, and like I said, he pushed really high up the pitch, and I actually think that Sancho benefited from this. So maybe this is something that United can learn and take forward. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think Fred had the greatest of games, but pushing forward, getting himself alongside Sancho, meant that Sancho was able to do his interlinking play, which we know is what he's best at. So I thought that was a good thing and something that perhaps Ten Hag could learn from this game, that when Eriksen comes back into the team, he perhaps needs to push him a little bit higher at times to really get in support of Sancho. With this reasonably decent link up down the left, I actually thought Jadon Sancho was probably the best player on the pitch, and I've given him a little bit of criticism recently for being a bit passive on the ball, is probably the best way to word it. I didn't think that was the case in this game. He would get the ball and really look to drive at the defence, really be aggressive with the way that he played, looking to quickly get forward. And I think that's what we need to see more of, because he played really well. But unfortunately, he would drive at the defence, and then, because he's right-footed, he can't really naturally go to the byline and then put a cross in on his left foot. Which, as a result, means Ronaldo doesn't get the supply up front. So kind of what he does is he drives forward with the ball, gets to here, which is positive. Occasionally he takes on Trippier, but he can't really go down the line and then cross it. And then because Shaw isn't always overlapping, he's often playing a bit more tucked in, it leads to Sancho maybe becoming a bit too predictable. So he would then shift the ball off to Fred. Of course, Newcastle are much deeper in their position now. And poor old Fred. Fred. He had a really, really bad game. Now, I've seen some people putting stats online suggesting he had a good game. Please just watch the match. He didn't have a good game. He was really bad and just so erratic. I done a video on Christian Eriksen last week talking about the control and the intelligence and the technical ability that he brings to this United side. With Fred in the team, no disrespect to him, United just lose that completely. And the most basic of passes aren't completed. He shoots from weird places. So that was a lot of the issue that United faced. Just intelligence on the ball. Unfortunately, Fred isn't the most intelligent player on the ball, especially in the final third. And that was one of the problems. I thought another one of the problems was Bruno Fernandes' positioning. Now, early in the game, he actually saw him kind of picking up this right pocket. And actually, even better than that, there were times where Bruno would drift to the left and then Fred would make a conscious effort to come to the right-hand side. So I'd quite like to see that. Because, as something I've spoken about before, United need more players on this right-hand side. But again, unfortunately, as the game progressed, players seemed to revert to old habits a little bit. Bruno Fernandes started drifting left more. Fred was, of course, in this left space. Ronaldo was drifting left. Dalot was reasonably deep on this right-hand side. And it just left Antony with so much work to do. And this is where I think United are perhaps a little bit too predictable in the final third at the moment. Manchester United, that is. I think they have to do much more in the final third with the ball. They have to be more aggressive, more dangerous, but also just more unpredictable. Because Antony kind of has the same problem that Sancho has on the other side, actually to a further extent. So what Antony does, he picks the ball up, he carries, he's quite aggressive with his carries, taking on Dan Burn all game, which was good to see. But he gets in this area, he's worked himself just a half a yard of space. This ball has to go in on his right foot. He has to cross this ball right-footed for someone like Ronaldo to attack in the middle, for Fernandes to attack in the middle, because United did have players in the box. But unfortunately, Antony is so left-footed. I would love to see if there's a stat on this game whether Antony passed or kicked the ball with his right foot. Especially in the final third. Because he never does it. And again, it's predictability. So like with Sancho on the other side, he can't really go on his left foot so he cuts back in. Antony was doing the same thing. He kind of gets to here, has this space on his right foot but chooses not to cross it. So he checks back and Dan Burn knows he's going to do that. And I think that is Newcastle and Eddie Howe knowing what Antony wanted to do and setting up accordingly. Dan Burn always looked ready to deal with Antony. Now, to be fair, there were still occasions when Antony would cut in and then bend a cross in, but you're now trying to complete a very difficult cross, especially when Newcastle eventually, at spells, almost ended up in a 6-3 formation, with the wingers dropping right in and the fullbacks coming extremely narrow. Newcastle had so many players defending their box, this sort of cross is going to have to be perfect. And I think that was a problem for United. They got into decent positions, but the end product wasn't good enough. Players like Antony, the cross wasn't good enough. The final shot, not quite good enough. Ronaldo, I don't know what to say about Ronaldo's performance. I'm really kind of on the fence about it. So I thought he'd done some things well, but then there were also situations where he looked a bit lazy, not getting back on side. I thought his passing wasn't quite as good as what it's been in recent weeks. But he just doesn't offer enough in the final third at the moment. But a lot of that does come down to the rest of his teammates. The ball into the box has to come quicker, has to be better. United kind of got into this pattern of work the ball down this side, Antony cuts inside, alright, we'll go back, go out down the left hand side, Sancho gets the ball, Sancho cuts inside, and United just kind of cycle the ball like in a U shape like this. United find themselves doing that a lot. And I think, again, Eddie Howe deserves credit because I think he knew that was United's issue. United, most of their progressing ability comes from out wide, because if we look in the middle of the pitch, especially without Eriksen, United don't really have any good ball progressors. Casemiro is decent at it, to be fair, but in terms of the midfield, Fred just can't do that job. We know he can't. We've spoken about it a lot in the past. So Newcastle just put their three in midfield, stayed nice and compact, and then loads of defenders narrow as well, with the wingers putting in a really good shift. And Manchester United just couldn't really break them down. United, of course, still got decent opportunities, But again, I think we're talking about what we were talking about with the Ammonia game. United are getting opportunities but not chances. And what I mean by that is I personally see an opportunity as getting into a position to cross, for example, or a position to play a through ball in behind the defence. I see a chance as that pass has been completed and I get the shot off. I've had the chance. So, let's say, for example, here. If I'm Anthony, I get the ball here and cross it and Ronaldo headers it, that's a chance. But if I get the ball here and in a really good area and don't cross it, that's an opportunity that United had because they got themselves into a good position but then didn't act on it. United find themselves getting into good opportunities, and like I was saying the other day, that's sort of Ten Hag's job, to get these players in the right positions, the right areas, the right patterns of rotation, get them these opportunities. The players then have to turn them into chances and then, of course, take the chances as well. That's what United aren't doing at the moment. Fred, of course, missed kind of an open goal, although there might have been offside in the build-up. And then that Rashford chance last second. Now, can we talk about the referee? Yeah, it was really bad. It was a really bad refereeing performance. You know, he's human, it happens. I think probably more of the attention should be on VAR, because that's what VAR is there for, to make these decisions when the referee doesn't see it. I thought the Ronaldo disallowed goal was very, very interesting. I'm sure you've all seen a video on Twitter. I thought Sancho maybe has a case for a penalty. Well, actually, a really strong case for a penalty, because he runs into the box and gets kicked. So maybe, I think Ronaldo had a shout for a penalty. But up the other end, I thought Wilson had a shout for a penalty. The officiating performance was not good by any means, and it led to a really stop-start game, which didn't help the flow at all. But United need to learn to overcome those problems. In terms of long-term, looking forward, I don't think United were bad. I think they eventually took control against a really good Newcastle side. Like I said, Newcastle, one of the best teams in the Premier League this season so far. So Manchester United done really well to take control and dominate that game. Newcastle never looked like scoring, I don't think. But United just need better decision making. Better execution. There were so many subpar performances in this game. Anthony wasn't up to it. Fred wasn't up to it. Dalot wasn't up to it. Fernandes wasn't up to it. They all had okay performances. I'm not saying they were disaster classes, but United need better. There's only so many games this season where we can keep going. Yeah, the patterns are right, but the players didn't execute. Unlucky. The players have to execute eventually, because these are expensive footballers. These guys get paid a lot. They play for one of the biggest clubs in the world, and at times it's really fundamental stuff they're not doing. Just picking the right pass, not overcomplicating things. United are just making silly errors. In terms of Ten Hag, I think, again, he got it tactically pretty spot on, because Manchester United often played through the press of a team that are good at pressing, not always, granted. United took control against a team that are really difficult to take control against, and they looked really good defensively as well, which we haven't even spoken about in this video. The issue for me at the moment is on the players. The players kind of need to catch up with Ten Hag almost. But yeah, that's my thoughts. The players are getting put into the positions by the tactics, the system, the patterns, the formations, the shapes, whatever you want to call it, but they're not then delivering. They're getting into the area, they're getting opportunities, but it's not turning into chances. So if you look at all the metrics, it looks like United aren't creating chances, which is true, but it doesn't mean the promise isn't there. There's certainly potential, because United are getting into the right areas. It's just a case of executing. It's playing that final ball, it's deciding when to shoot and when to cross, when to slip the pass through, when to take the extra touch, things like that. Hopefully, these United players kind of learn to do that. Will they or not? I don't know, we're going to have to wait and see. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Did you think it was a bad game? Are you disappointed with the 0-0 result? What players pleased you in quite an annoying result? Like I said, it's a frustrating game, but there were still positives. So who impressed you? For me, it's probably Jadon Sancho. Yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.